Are the Jedi superheroes? Hi, I'm Jordan the Nerd of Gold, and recently I released my standards for who does qualify as a superhero. Now, this isn't to say that other characters aren't heroes or aren't cool, but I think it's pretty limited on who is a superhero, and I think my standards kind of define that. So I want to go through on characters who are close, but maybe not, to see if they are superheroes. So going with point one, Jedis, they have the power and skill. Obviously, between the Force and their lightsaber training, yeah, that's a point in their favor. Number two, secret identity. I can't think of any Jedi with like a secret identity. They pretty much all have who they are as their identities. I think the closest we get is Old Man Kenobi on Tatooine when Obi-Wan hides between episodes 3 and 4. I think that's really the closest we get to it, so I'll give it a point for Obi-Wan, but not necessarily the Jedi Order as a whole there. A heroic identity is another thing. So they are symbols of power, of good throughout the galaxy on that front. I would say yes, that's another point in their favor that it could qualify on that front, because another similar organization, the Green Lanterns, over in DC Comics, I think are pretty similar to the Jedi overall. I'm going to go ahead and count that as a point in their favor. Special Headquarters. This one I think is arguable because I don't think most people can really name anything outside of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. They have bases throughout the galaxy, but are they like as well known as the Jedi Temple? And I'm going to go with no for the most part. I think most people can really only name that one place, and they may not even remember that it's on Coruscant. So I'm going to say that's iconic enough that it counts as one, as a point in their favor, even though we know they have tons of other bases and shipyards and all that. Going next, Rogues Gallery. So Rogues Gallery is basically a set of villains that recur to give characters drama on that front, and I do see several villains throughout Star Wars kind of functioning in a similar manner, but I don't think they really count as that, because they are members of a war. They are part of a faction rather than individuals who are trying to gain some control or gain some material wealth or something like that. So I don't really think that there are rogues or villains in the same sense of a supervillain and a superhero relationship within Star Wars. So I'm going to say that's not a point in their favor. Now, you could make an argument on a case-by-case basis with Jedis and individuals within there, maybe, but I would have to hear that argument out. I would say as the Jedi Order as a whole, no. The individual Jedis, maybe. Next is themed gear / lightsabers or weapons. So yeah, lightsabers, truly iconic weapon. They do typically carry the same kind of wardrobe and gear on them. So yeah, I'm going to say that's another point in their favor. For the people. So this is talking about superhero value systems, because superheroes typically exist in this moral liminal space where they are technically criminals, but they work for the good of the society, and they don't have like a government or heavenly mandate. Now, I will say, based on what we see in the core Star Wars stories, most of these characters are acting on a political / government mandate and or acting on the divine will of the Force, because the Force, while it's kind of nebulous in its nature, it also seems to have a will, because we do frequently hear characters talk about the will of the Force. I would say that's close enough to count as like a divine mandate. So I'm going to go with no, they don't act in just out of their own consciousness for the good of society. I do think some Jedi may count as acting in this sense, but that's like a case-by-case basis rather than a on-the-whole basis. But even the case-by-case basis, with the Force being like their guide, a moral authority, I don't know that any Jedi qualifies in that sense. So last one is an iconic location. This is saying like a place that like has the same relationship that Batman and Gotham have, or Superman and Metropolis. I don't think any Jedi outside of Luke Skywalker and Tatooine have this kind of same status, because I mean, really, most of Star Wars happens on Tatooine or Coruscant, and I don't think any Jedi is like owns that place in the same way that Batman owns Gotham in terms of how we think about the superhero. So I'm gonna go with no, but maybe like one or two Jedis have this as a point in their favor. So overall, I would say the Jedi Order as a whole does not count as a group of superheroes. They are cool fantasy characters in a space setting. I do like them, but I don't think they're superheroes. And there is maybe a case to be made for a handful of Jedis to have to qualify as superheroes. But let me know, who do you think the individual Jedis are that count as superheroes according to my definition? And do you think that I'm wrong in thinking that the Jedi Order as a whole is not a group of superheroes?